everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Essays and Espresso podcast. I am your host, Daniel, and with me as always is my stalwart co-hosts, Boken, how are you?
Hello, wonderful and fine.
And Acer, how are you?
I'm good. Did you know Bogenjima stands for Adventure Island?
Haven't I already told you that?
You just did before recording.
You do know that's an old game, right? That's an old game series.
Oh.
Where you
play
a caveman who is rocking a skateboard and he's killing dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I was gonna call you a weep, but that's actually super cool.
But it's also a weep game. And the reason I have this name is because I used to... I feel like I already told you this. I used to have like a Game Boy collection with 150 games, and one of them was Adventure Island, but the title on the screen was in Japanese, so it said Bokenjima, and me as a dumb 6-year-old thought that was the most hilarious thing ever. And that's why I kept that name.
That's where it comes from. Okay, yeah. I've never heard this, so interesting.
What's our subject? What's our subject today? What's our topic, Daniel?
Okay, today we're going to be discussing...
You so-called host?
I was going to get to it, but then you guys went on this tangent. Give me some credit here, okay? What makes a good/bad flawed character? So we're going to dive into that later on, but first we need to talk about what we've been up to recently. So apparently you two saw Avengers Endgame, and you want to talk about that. I haven't. I don't really care about all this cape nonsense. I'm going to tap out, so you two enjoy your little Avengers talk.
I feel like you're putting down our topics here. Yeah. And I do not appreciate it.
I'm not putting down anything. I am just expressing my extreme apathy.
You know, Boken, this would never happen if I were hosting this episode.
I'm sure it would.
I can't help it if I don't care.
Okay, Avengers Endgame, Boken, what did you think?
Can we just for a second, let's say this is going to be a spoiler-heavy episode for all of our topics, including Avengers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, this is coming out, I imagine, like a month from now. So
yes. And also there's timestamps in the description and all that, so whatever.
Yes. When we're recording this, Avengers Endgame has not become the highest grossing movie of all time, but it's tracking to be, and I hope it is, because Avatar is a fucking shit movie. Quickly, guys, what's the main character's name in Avatar?
I've never seen it.
John Doe.
Nobody knows. This movie left no cultural imprint. It's the biggest movie of all time. Get it out of here.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's an awful movie. It's just aggressively mediocre.
James Cameron needs to take his submarine and make another Terminator movie. He's good with that.
I don't know if I trust him.
Didn't he do Genesis? Wasn't he involved in Genesis?
No, that wasn't him.
No. He was involved.
Wasn't he in the advertisement of that movie?
Yes, he was involved in the marketing, but that's it. They just wanted him to be in the marketing. They probably just gave him like, here's $1 million. Say that it's good. And he was like, well, the rights are going to refer to me again next year, so I don't give a shit. Sure, it's fine. Whatever.
And then he was like, oh, you look at the screen and you see things you remember.
Yeah. And I was watching it and I saw things, and they were things that I remembered.
Perfect description. Anyway, Avengers. What did you think?
I thought it was good, but I also thought a lot of it was kind of crap.
Okay. Such as?
I don't know. No, I really liked all of the Captain America stuff. Captain America's my man. He's been my favorite of these MCU heroes ever since his first movie came out. Oh my god, but Iron Man is so charismatic. True, but I still like Captain America more.
Thank you for taking over my part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, that's no. That's yeah. This is your topic. Yeah. What did I dislike? I guess I just disliked that. I feel like this part of the MCU is over, and now we're left with a lot of characters I don't really care about. Like, Iron Man's gone, and Captain America is gone until they, make him young again if they decide to do that. And it's like, the new Captain America, it's the Falcon, or maybe it's going to be Bucky. And you're like, well, those two guys are very uncharismatic, so I don't care about that.
Dude, the Falcon is the most nothing character I've ever seen.
Yes.
I do not know what he has ever done. I don't know when he entered the MCU. I do the Star Wars test with me and describe the Falcon without mentioning what he looks like or what his power is.
See, that's kind of annoying because Anthony Mackie, I feel like, is wrong for that character. Because the Falcon in the comics, I really like him, and he is.
You read comics, you fucking nerd.
What? What is this? Yeah, no. He's been Captain America. I think he's currently Captain America in the comics, and I think he's been Captain America for like 2 or 3 years. And there's been a lot of good stuff with him as Captain America, but we had, I think it was Ed Brubaker who did like a 10-year run of Bucky being Captain America, which was much better. And I would have much preferred if Bucky became Captain America so that we could see some of those stories. But I imagine they're just going to bring Chris Evans back out like 5 years from now to reprise the role.
That would be very sad.
Yep. But
I'm super saying you're creatively bankrupt.
I'm super interested in all the space stuff except for maybe like Captain Marvel. But that's just because I didn't really like her movie. I imagine that they can do better things with her. Apparently, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to introduce Beta Ray Bill. Do you know who that is?
No, I've never read a comic book in my life.
Okay, imagine Thor. Okay, like you have Chris Hemsworth. He's like in his weird Asgardian uniform. But now imagine that he has the face of an alien horse. That's Beta Ray Bill.
But is he also royalty of some planet?
No. He's a guardian of like the last survivors of a specific race, I recall. And he's super weird. And he was able to lift Mjolnir. See, I'm gonna send you a picture of this guy. Yeah, and I
don't want to get into too granular of a discussion, but there were a lot of parts of the movie I didn't necessarily understand because a lot of it was references to things that I have no clue of. And then when Captain America lifts Mjolnir, I had no idea why or what that meant.
Oh.
Except, he's chosen now or something.
That's because only those who are worthy can lift the hammer.
Yeah, I know, but then why is Captain America worthy and not anyone else?
Because he's the best guy. That's Beta Ray Bill.
Is there no better explanation for that?
No, because he's just a good guy. I don't know what you mean.
Iron Man is good too.
No.
A lot of the Avengers are good.
No.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
Yeah, no, but why?
It's because he's a good guy. Mm-hmm. Like he's like ethically wise, and he's like respectful.
He's pure.
He's the goodest of boys.
He's very good. It's also like, have you seen Robert Downey Jr.'s arms? That man is not lifting a hammer.
I thought the actual weight of the hammer is insignificant.
It is.
It's all metaphorical, man.
But I really like that because they broke the hammer in Thor Ragnarok, and it was like, oh, so we're not going to see... Because it was in the comic run where Captain America fought Thanos. I recall he lifted the hammer and beat him up. And I was like, oh, we're not going to see that. But then we saw it, and it was awesome.
You know what was fucked up? When they start traveling back, dude, I hate that we don't give our big impressions first. But there are so many moments in that fucking movie where Thor goes back in time and, has that whole scene with his mother.
Yes.
And then he takes the hammer, the Mjolnir of that time, and takes it back into the future with him.
Mm.
So what about the Thor of that actual time? Is he just going to wake up and not have a hammer anymore?
No. Look, there are time paradoxes in the movie, but with all of that stuff, the idea at the end is that Captain America returns the hammer and all the stones back to the proper place just seconds after they were taken.
They never said he would take the hammer.
No,
they said he'd take the stones.
Yeah, but he was holding the hammer when he traveled back in time at the end.
Really?
So assumably he returned it. That being said,
okay.
there are still issues with so Captain America just went back in time and lived out his life in the past?
Yeah, that makes no sense because when they go back in time, they actually enter another timeline.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this time he entered his own time. But
yeah,
then
and I was super disappointed with that stuff because I thought the way they resolved the time travel with you take the stones and then you return them exactly where you took them and at the moment you took them, I thought that was a really interesting way to sort of solve the time paradoxes. Because we just return them and then time moves on. It's natural. But then you're just going to do the Captain America living in the past. You're just going to do these paradoxes anyway? Like what?
Yeah.
Loki's going to take the Tesseract and disappear at the end of Avengers? That's a massive... what? So he's not captured and Thor 2 doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's another timeline. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Not our problem. Hashtag not our problem.
Yes. I really like that we got Madman Thanos in this one.
Nah. Yeah. I see my thing with the movie is I liked it. I think it did what it set out to do. But in my heart of hearts, that first half was by far my favorite part.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
And then when they started going back into the past to fix everything, and then it went full fan service. No, we're gonna redo what happened. Everything is gonna be fine. It just dipped for me in interest. Mm-hmm. Because I wish that the concept of them living out the fact that 50% of all life in the galaxy is gone, and them being depressed and dour and trying to deal with it was so entertaining to me.
Yeah.
And that's not a good movie for the end of this whole series, but that is the movie I want to see.
I hope they do. They're doing a What If series on Disney Plus, where it's like, what if Haley Atwell's character Pecky had been Captain America instead of Steve Rogers, and what if this would have happened instead? I would really like to see a what if they didn't time travel. Right? What if they just had to live out their lives in this miserable dimension? Because then we could theoretically go into like Marvel Zombies or something like that. But I really liked at the beginning, and I was like, oh, when Thanos just kill him in the first 15 minutes, just lop his old raisiny head off. That was super cool. I thought they were gonna chop off Thor's arm. I thought they had been setting that up. Because in the comics he has the Destroyer arm, and he chopped off Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet arm in the beginning, and I thought, oh, because now Thanos and Thor at the end, they're fighting, and he's gonna chop off Thor's arm. But that didn't happen. Do you know what I'm not looking forward to? I'm not looking forward to all those fat Thor cosplays. Just a bunch of sweaty fat guys like, oh, I'm doing a Thor cosplay.
No, I can be Thor.
Like, look, you could have been Thor. You could have gone to the gym and you could have taken care of your disgusting body. Nah.
You fat phobic fuck. Everyone can cosplay everything.
Yes.
Don't be a bigot. Also fuck fat people.
Well, I also didn't like the there was a little scene at the end where it was like all the women of the Marvel universe, and they were like, "Ooh, we're standing together," and it was like, "Oh, really?" Like, it's sort of on the nose.
It was kind of on the nose, yeah, but whatever. It's a dumb, schlocky action scene at the end.
Yeah,
it's
but it was like
people entering through portals and looking cool. I like that.
I appreciate that it was like, oh, look at how many like female women in representation and all that we've done over the years. Like, look at how much we've done. But it also felt like, this is a movie for children. I forgot, like, when that scene came out.
Why for children?
That was just like, because grown people don't need to, like, no grown woman is watching that and being like, yes! That's like that's for girls.
I think I disagree, and I think market data and popularity disagrees with you as well.
I would say no grown woman who's mature is watching that then.
But also, whatever, then little children watch it and go, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not superheroes.
I'm not. Look, I am not one of those like that no bullshit guy on YouTube or one of those guys who's angry about women in my cape kinos. I'm really happy that they're doing a lot of weirder stuff with this.
It was incredibly on the nose, but as a movie that celebrates the past 11 years or whatever it was, I am totally fine with them actually having a shot of every female important character that they created and them just being as badass as the boys.
Yeah, you know what? When you put it that way, I actually kind of agree with you. I do think it was a bit on the nose, but
yeah,
I think that if I watched it again, I'd be a lot less apathetic to it. A lot more apathetic to it, I should say. You know what's also...
Are you guys done?
No! What are you...
Just getting started.
Oh, God.
No, whatever. The discussion has been very unfocused, but...
I'm really excited for the future of Marvel because they have access to Doctor Doom again. My God, I hope they do him well. He's basically Iron Man, but he's like the better Iron Man. He's smarter, he's stronger, he's got better technology, and he can also do magic, but he's also more egotistical. I really want to see them do Doctor Doom right.
Well, fifth time is a charm.
Yes.
But yeah, whatever. These movies aren't going anywhere. Spider-Man is coming out in a few months.
Yes.
Which I'm looking forward to, because Spider-Man Homecoming was good.
That was a good one.
And whatever.
I hope they call Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as Guardians of the Galaxy. And I hope it's like they keep the Thor Guardians team up going.
I do too. Thor's chemistry with Starkiller is insanely good.
Yes.
There's a lot of, the Marvel movies have gotten really funny to a point where I can just simply appreciate that it's genuinely good comedy writing.
They were always funny, but they dipped after a while, and then they kind of came back.
Maybe.
Because like
I haven't seen the early movies in a while.
Iron Man 1, that was a funny movie, but then like the Hulk that came out, and then like Thor and Captain America, and they weren't like unfunny, but they weren't funny movies.
But they weren't like quality jokes like, "No sir, this is America's ass."
Yeah.
That's a line I genuinely laughed at.
Those movies are really preoccupied with the male form.
Well, they're all fucking bodybuilders.
Yeah,
but I think talk about unrealistic body stereotypes.
But you know what? I think that's healthy. I think it's healthier for people to look to like, oh my God, look at Captain America flexing his biceps while he's pulling that helicopter. Like, that is just a glamour shot made to celebrate the male form. But it was so good. And then Thor is like keeping the forge open by just flexing, doing the double arm flex. It was really good.
Remember that scene in Fast and the Furious 7 where The Rock, like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, gets his arm broken, and then he has an arm cast, and at the end of the movie he goes, "No, the movie needs me now," and then he flexes it off.
Oh, jeez.
And just the action.
I haven't seen that movie. Is it really?
Fantastic. It's a shit movie, but whatever.
That's... But yeah, what more do we say about Avengers? I'm really
Nothing,
excited.
let's move on.
I hope they get. I hope they don't just double down on James Gunn's vision of the cosmic universe. Not because his vision is bad, but because I think that they need somebody else to really bring to life the sort of Jack Kirby weirdness.
I don't know who Jack Kirby is.
He's the guy who created all of these characters, basically. Like Captain America, Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, he didn't do Doctor Strange, that was Ditko. The Hulk, all of these characters, the Avengers, all of it was all created by Jack Kirby. That's not to say Stan Lee was like... People think he was like just hawking all the credit, but Jack Kirby's role in creating all these characters has been severely underplayed over the years. But I think we should move on, unless you have something more to say.
No. You're a nerd.
No.
So I saw the first episode of YuGiOh 5Ds.
Yeah.
Was it everything you hoped for?
Everything and more. Now, I saw it dubbed, much to Acer's chagrin. And, woo! The dub was bad! It was so bad! So here's... Oh my god, I don't even know where to begin. So, why are they on motorcycles?
You would understand that if you would have watched the goddamn sub.
Are you sure about that?
Yes! Okay, so let's go over... I think a good way to frame this conversation is you ask me questions you have of the dub, and I'll explain to you why it's better in the sub. Do you want to do that?
Okay. How about you just give the answers to the questions of why are things happening?
Okay,
Yes.
but then I need to explain it in the context of the sub, because the dub doesn't have answers for anything.
Okay, so I don't know if this was a weird piece of dialogue that or what, but like they said that it was against the law for that sector to have a decks of cards.
Yes.
Like is that true in the sub?
It is, but it's also fleshed...
What?
Wait. It's also fleshed out a lot more. So basically, the idea in this universe is that the dual runner, which are the motorcycles, they're sort of symbolic of freedom, because these people, they've been subjugated, and the only way you get out of this sort of squalor is if you get one of those motorcycles and you're able to excel at this. It doesn't make any sense, but like in the... But it doesn't make sense in the literal sense of why don't they just use guns and rebel, but it makes sense in the, okay, they've just established this and we're just going with it. That's just the conceit of this universe. And the idea is that since that is the embodiment of freedom, the way you subjugate these people is by taking away their cards, taking away their ability to move and all that stuff. And that sort of police subjugation, you don't see that in the dub. There's a lot more of it in the sub.
Okay, so like in the original show, it seemed like, you know, the card game was just like this cool card game that people liked, but I guess there was some like magical shit attached to it, and it was like fine, okay, whatever. But like in this show, the literal society that they live in is catered around the fucking card game, which is so bizarre and weird.
Isn't that standard Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah, well, look.
In the original Yu-Gi-Oh, it was just a popular card game. It was like society wasn't like all like catered around the card game. It was just this cool card game that kids liked, and you know, there happened to be some magical bullshit that was attached to it. In this show, society is literally built around the fucking card game, which blows my mind. Like, that does just... Why?
So this is me sort of as a Yu-Gi-Oh lore master of the Yu-Gi-Oh lore master of the podcast. I
What
suppose.
a sad title. Can I just say?
Well, look, in the original series, I disagree that society wasn't catered around the card game,
Okay, well,
but it was
I
not. It
haven't-
was not.
I-
It was not this extensive. I'll grant you that.
I haven't seen it in like 15 years, so like I just remembered it being like, yeah, it was like a super popular card game on the level of like Pokemon was in the West, but I don't remember it being like anything more than that. But whatever, it's been a while.
Yeah, like we can move away from that stuff. The idea behind society running around the card game is that the magical properties of the monsters that are being reawakened with the duels, they still exist. And when you're dueling, you create energy, and the city harnesses that energy to keep itself functioning.
What the fuck?
That's so dumb.
Yeah, it is dumb, but you know what?
People just go for one day. I don't feel like playing the card game today, and everything breaks apart.
It's like, no, I gotta play the card game. I gotta keep the lights on.
Wow.
Yeah, but look, guys, it's stupid. I know that. But they also, like, it doesn't need to be smart. It just needs to be consistent. You just need to throw out the rules and be consistent about it.
That's actually one thing I keep wanting to bring this up during one of the podcasts. There's a thing that Alfred Hitchcock said in an interview where, I don't know if you guys know this, it's kind of not popular, but well known, that he says there in a piece of fiction or in a story, there can be one element that isn't explained. And that is totally fine. And you can go with that. And the rest of the story has to make sense. Do you guys know that?
Yeah, I remember that quote.
That is kind of what Yu-Gi-Oh does, right? Like, just let's imagine the society is built around the card game, and let's take it from there.
Yeah, let's say that conflict is expressed through the card game and all that stuff. And then, yeah, the show sort of logically works from there. Until the further seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds where it sort of went down the crap. What did you think about Greg Abbey's performance as Yusei? The most earnest of all 4Kids voice actors, Greg Abbey.
That's the main character?
Yes.
This seemed fine. Like, honestly, compared to all the other actors, he seemed the least bad. It seemed like he was the most subdued. I would say that if you were going to watch the dub, he and Ted Lewis as Jack Atlas are the only thing that make that show somewhat watchable. But I still prefer the Japanese voice actors. I also thought it was hilarious how the police officer was drawn in that episode, because just the way his face is drawn and his mannerisms were so cartoonishly evil. And the voice actor was also really hamming it up. He's just like, like
that was Dan Green, the guy who voiced Yuki in the dub.
What? Are you serious?
Yes, that was Dan
He
Green.
went from the main character to like this like loser police officer that gets like bumped off in the first episode.
No, he reappears, but yeah, and Greg Abbey actually voiced Tristan, who was like that tall, brown-haired idiot friend of Yuki's.
I remember Tristan mostly because of the little Karibo abridged series.
Yeah,
Hey,
Greg
guys.
I
Abbey,
remember Tristan.
Greg Abbey voiced him.
Was Tristan an idiot?
No, he
I
wasn't.
thought he was just dude.
He was in the abridged.
Yeah, exactly.
In the abridged, he was so dumb.
Joe
Okay.
is the idiot.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe is the idiot. Okay, what other questions do you have?
Are the monsters real?
No, it's
So-
3D. It's 3D holograms, but the further you get into the series and the more more of the mystical world they visit and less of the sort of scientific world, the more that sort of boundary starts to break.
Huh. Okay. What the hell does... Why do they feel the need to have these duels on the motorcycles? Like, what does that add to the actual duels?
What does it add to the duels?
Yeah.
It makes it visually interesting.
That's the only reason.
I think the reason Kazuki Takahashi did it that way was because he just watched a lot of Akira before making it. I imagine that's the reason why. In the manga...
That's such a sad excuse. I'm sure he just added it because he needed a fucking gimmick because Yu-Gi-Oh! is burned out.
In the manga, he did it because I think they were... I haven't read all the manga, but my understanding is that they were sort of like crusaders or knights or something who like rode on horsebacks and played these
while
games
playing cards?
No, who summoned monsters to fight one another, and that sort of is modernized with the motorcycles.
Wait, who summoned monsters?
The knights and the old, like back in
the Yu-Gi-Oh universe.
Yes.
So they played card games without the cards, but just summoning monsters.
Yeah,
yes.
originally.
Is that what the pharaohs did too?
Yes. And then the Yugi, or like Yami, the pharaoh, he locked all that magical shit away. And then, when Yugimoto finished the Millennium Puzzle, he accidentally brought all that magic back.
Okay, I think we should move on.
How did one company make a card game out of it and monopolize the whole thing?
Because Maximilian Pegasus, or Pegasus J. Crawford in the sub, he has one of those Millennium items, and he was able, like, he can read minds. And he has access to that dark magic, and he saw, like, oh, this is where it's all gonna go. And, like, this ancient game that was played 10,000 years ago, like 5,000 years ago, that game is about to restart again in modern times, and everything needs to be prepared. And I'm gonna use the magic to bring back my wife or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember something about his wife.
Was Pegasus a board member of Kaiba's company?
No, he had a company called Industrial Illusions, and he was trying to take over Kaiba's company.
Wait, what does Kaiba's company produce?
Kaiba's company they produced war machines under the board member under the leadership of Gozaburo Kaiba, the adoptive father of Seto Kaiba. But when Seto Kaiba took over the company, I think he moved it into like telecommunications and games. Like gaming.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm done with Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's move on.
Wait, you didn't say if you liked it or not.
You know what's fucking weird? Like, we have scripts of philosophers from medieval times and ancient Greek times, but somehow the recordings of the card games or of the secret games back then didn't survive. People didn't know about that the knights played those.
Now, look, I'm guessing that it was like knights on horseback. I'm just saying there was something about spirits riding on like skeletal horses or something that was just modernized for the era the manga takes place in. I'm not. Yeah. I don't know for sure. If
we are moving on. We're not talking about Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. I did not like the episode. I don't want to watch anymore.
What?
We're moving on.
What? After all this?
But it makes so much sense.
We're moving on. So, I just recently beat Katana Zero. I beat it twice. I beat it a second time just so I could fight the like secret hidden boss that you have to fulfill some like really specific conditions in order to unlock. Totally worth it though. I think it was easily the best boss fight in the game. Really tough, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed the game overall. I mean, I wouldn't have beaten it twice if I didn't. I think the whole game is just fantastic. The music was great. I loved the visuals. The sprite work is gorgeous. The gameplay is tight and fun, and figuring out how to get through all the different rooms is so visceral and enthralling. And I even thought that the story in it was pretty neat too. I liked figuring out what was going on and what exactly was like giving the main character his precognition and just the sort of the weird way that the story would progress and dull out information. I thought it was all really cool. It does end on a cliffhanger, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? They're going to be releasing some free DLC soon, so that's cool. I don't know if the cliffhanger is referring to the DLC, or if eventually we'll get a sequel, like a full-blown new game. Not sure, but as it stands, Katana Zero is a badass game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think the story was actually my favorite aspect overall. The soundtrack is dope. The gameplay is good. I just wish it was a bit more complex. Like throughout the game, I kind of hoped they would maybe add another mechanic.
They kind of did, and then they took it away from us, which I was not pleased with, because I feel like there's a lot more gameplay complexity that could have been added to the different scenarios had we been playing as that other character. So I think
that's
it was
what you mean with they did.
What is it?
You mean when you said they did add something, you mean the second character?
Right.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I was actually hoping that, like, because the way that it's contextualized in the story, the main character is watching a videotape, and he is watching this other guy fight through the prison. And I think that's a cool way of showing that and giving us the opportunity to play as that character. But I was really hoping that, like, after that, because that character has an ability that the main character doesn't. And I was really hoping that the main character was watching this and would go like, oh, this is how he's doing that. He would learn it, and then you would keep that ability for the rest of the game, but that's not how it works. And I was like, that's... What a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I guess. That ability is also kind of overpowered, though.
It is, but at the same time, like, all they would need to do is to make the game harder around that ability and make it so that it's balanced around it.
Did you notice that there's a lot of little details in this game that I probably appreciated the most? When you beat a stage, you kind of get a replay of what happened, right? And
yes.
It looks like security footage of a camera. And in that footage, when you watch that back, all the time warping abilities don't actually happen. They happen instantly.
It's just shown seamlessly.
Yeah. And that also happened with the second guy, where he would just in the game you can actually slow down time, aim where you want to go, and then slash over there, and then on the footage it's just seamlessly. Suddenly he's completely in a different place, and everything around him died. That was the whole way they portrayed time. It's not time travel. It's just time altering. But in the mind, so it happens in the mind of the character, but no one around him actually sees it. And that comes into play with a lot of the story, and that was so interesting to me.
That's how it appears at first, but then when there's one character in particular where when you talk to him, it seems as if your character is actually reversing time, because he's able to retain information that he got and spit it back out. So, like, there are certain dialogue options where you learn that, like, oh, the character has a date, and you learn what his name is.
Yeah.
And then, but you have to die a couple of times before you get that information. And when you come back, you say it to him, and then he's like, what the hell? You know, how do you know my name? How do you know about the date? Well, you know, what's going on here? So
but see, it's portrayed that way, And I'm not sure how it's explained, but it's basically the usage of a drug, right? Of an experimental drug.
Yeah, Chronos.
I don't think a drug can give you time travel powers. It can slow down your perception of time. It can maybe help you. I don't know. See, that is where the explanation kind of falls apart, or where you just have to take it at face value. And I choose to believe that the drug doesn't give him time travel powers. It's just something close to it, so they can contextualize the Hotline Miami style gameplay of try and try again.
I mean, I understand, but at the same time, I think the game is being a little loosey-goosey with the world building, because the secret boss that you fight is a character that basically just injects himself with a ton of, like, experimental government-created drugs, and then he eventually starts floating and shooting, like, energy blasts at you. So, I mean, you might want to throw out, like, well, that's a secret boss. Maybe it's not canon.
It's in the game.
But it is in the game, so I think that there is a supernatural sort of, like, slant that this game has.
Okay.
So I think it can be explained that, like, the drug can actually alter time, if that's the case.
A experimental drug is too trivial of an explanation to me for time travel powers, if that makes sense. Just doesn't fit completely in my mind.
I mean, how else would you explain that the main character was able to learn what V's name is?
Yeah, exactly.
And
that is the stuff that doesn't fully make sense. He could maybe he has like 100 years of time to play it out in his mind or something, but that wouldn't explain why he gets new information.
Yeah, the way it's shown in the game is that, like, you're getting that information because you're talking to him, and then you get that information, and then you die, and then you come back with that information.
Yeah. But the time travel only works a few seconds into the past. And you know what? Maybe I shouldn't just try to understand it. I'm sure the more you try to break it down, the more it doesn't make sense. Because then you'd have to ask yourself questions like, how is it triggered? What if he dies instantly? Can he not go back in time? Because he's dead? How does it work?
I don't know.
Yeah. The point is
it's like Hitchcock, where, you know, you have that one thing that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
that's kind of that.
Yep. Yeah, that
because
one thing, it doesn't make sense, but everything else is consistent around it.
Yeah, the story around it is really cool in terms of those little details. As I said, in the video footage, you don't see the time slow down. Just a game that has that Hotline Miami style trial and error gameplay, but tries to come up with the rules why that even exists in the first place, and then that warping your understanding of time and reality, the drug in the main character's head, and that being built into the story of then he doesn't really know what's real and what isn't, and he starts hallucinating and all that shit. That is super interesting to me.
Yeah, it got really trippy, especially later on in the game, where the main character started to misremember things, and, like, he starts hallucinating and tripping out, and it's actually kind of revealed at one point that, like, there's one character in particular that wasn't actually there the entire time, and he had just been, like, hallucinating her the entire time. Yeah. And I actually, when I replayed the game, this is something I picked up. Every time the main character dreams and he has, like, a weird nightmare, one of the first times he has that nightmare, he's playing catch with someone, and if you look at that black shadow, it's actually the silhouette of that that character, that girl.
Yes, I noticed that. That's kind of obvious, actually. But I thought at
But
that
it
point
wasn't-
he was just what?
It wasn't obvious to me because I was playing on handheld on the Switch, so to me it just looked like a black blob.
Okay. No, you can really make out the silhouette, but at that point I was like, because that cutscene keeps changing in
It does.
what the characters, what they look like, that it is revealed more, then suddenly you realize, oh, that's actually a good guy, and then the cutscene has a new context and all that. So I was kind of thinking maybe because he can't fully remember, he just was inserting that girl into his memory because he was as interacting with her earlier.
Yeah. And then at the end of the game, you get to see that full scene, not as a dream, but as it actually happened. It kind of makes me think, though, that, like, it's possible that the character was mixing up memories and that, like, he had been in that building more than once. Like, maybe he was there as a child and then he came back as an adult and he was mixing up what had happened.
But in the end, it's kind of fully explained, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm just giving my my theory as to, like, why is it that the dream keeps changing? Because maybe he's just, like, fusing it with different memories.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. That's a good ass story. Good characters.
Yeah, cool.
Really, really cool characters.
Yeah, I liked the. I especially liked messing around with the therapist because he gets so angry with you, like at the very beginning of the game. If you hang up on him, he gets super pissed. If you keep hanging up with him, he gets progressively angrier. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And then the Russian guy who who enters your neighbor's apartment and tortures them and then sends you the video of it.
Yeah.
That is so great.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up.
And the neighbors have no fucking clue what's going on. That is, man. Yeah, but also gameplay, as you said, snappy, great. It could have been a bit
visceral.
deeper in my mind. Or more levels with more enemy variety, something like that. I wasn't fully satisfied with the gameplay that was in there. And then
I feel like it created an awesome foundation. And it just needs to be expanded on. It just, like, I thought it was such a missed opportunity that you can gain new swords, but you can only get those swords after you beat the game. Like, I thought that alone would have added some needed depth to the game, where as you play through the game, you get new swords with new properties and abilities, and, you could, like, choose your loadout before the next level, and, you could get a sword that's really fast, but maybe it doesn't deflect very well, or, maybe you can get a sword that's really slow, but you actually do get a sword that's really slow, but it carves through shields very easily. So I think that could have added some. The thing is, though, like, the swords that are in the game right now are, like, almost all of them are, like, immediately better than your base sword, except for, like, the first sword you unlock, which basically just changes the color of the blood. But, like, every other one is basically just an improvement over your standard katana. So I think if they just would have balanced the swords more, and they wouldn't make them just automatically better, and they were just, like, different, then I think that could have made for some more interesting and varied gameplay. But oh well, I still really like the gameplay. I recommend fighting that hidden boss, especially. Like, that for me was the peak of gameplay. Like, that boss was so much fun to fight, and it was really a really good challenge.
Okay. Maybe I will go back to it. Well, maybe I would just keep pumping the soundtrack, because that thing is fucking baller. The way the main character picks up his Walkman and clicks on it, and then the music starts playing. That's so good. That's such a good effect.
He's just like, wait a minute. Click. Yeah.
And synthwave beats come in. God, I love when music is actually played, or when music happens within the universe, and you hear it kind of distorted, or in the way the character would hear it. I love that so much.
That's
every
called,
time it happens.
That's called diegetic.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I was all for it. So yeah, Katana Zero, strongly recommended. I beat it on the Switch. I think it's I know for certain it's on PC. I don't know if it's on anything else. Okay. So yeah, strongly recommended. It's $15. Go pick it up. There's some free DLC coming our way, and what's already there is like really good. So give it a shot, guys. All right, Acer.
Yes.
Yes. You have some stuff that you wanted to talk about.
Yes. Which do you think is more interesting, the 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch or Perfect Blue?
I wonder.
Let's discuss Palmer Eldritch first.
Okay. Do you guys have any idea what it is?
Nope.
Bogan?
I know what Eldritch is.
Yes.
It's a book written by Philip K. Dick. He's my favorite author, I think. He wrote, for those not in the know, he wrote the book that would become Blade Runner, even though the movie doesn't really have anything to do with like the book. Not really.
Do sheep dream of?
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
Oh, yeah.
He wrote Dream of Electric Sheep. He wrote Valis. He wrote Martian Timeslip. He wrote Total Recall. He wrote Minority Report. He did The Man in the High Castle. He's a very prolific writer.
I actually just watched Total Recall the other day for the first time.
The Schwarzenegger one or the Colin Farrell one?
The Schwarzenegger one, obviously.
That movie is great.
I watched the remake.
People say that the Colin Farrell one is more accurate to the book, but I disagree.
Don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck, but also I disagree. Because I think one thing that really characterizes all of his books is that they're super weird. And they've got, like, you know, we've gone to this a couple of times now. Hitchcock said that you can have one thing that doesn't make sense.
I can't even tell if you guys are messing with me now.
Philip K. Dick's books have, like, 1,000 things that don't make sense. Like, in Yupik, they're traveling back in time, but also time is being eaten up, and also they're in half-life cryostasis, and the only salvation comes in the form of a golden spray can. And it's like, what the fuck is going on?
So he's a hack, is what you're saying.
No, he's amazing, is what I'm saying.
If that book came out today, people would rip it apart.
Yes, but people are wrong. People are wrong to do so.
YouTube videos.
The 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch is what I want to talk about, though. So the idea is that Earth is no good anymore. It's 100 years or something in the future. Earth is no good anymore. It's way too hot. And they're building colonies on Mars to sort of prepare for when we ruin the planet. Global warming, am I right, guys?
Please don't make this political.
Bunch of liberal propaganda, if you ask me.
Excuse me, it was 8 degrees today, so...
excuse me.
Clearly global warming is not happening right now.
Excuse me, I just saw snow. But, so it's getting way too hot in the book, so they're building these refugee camp. Well, what word did I use earlier? They're terraforming it. They're building little stations of little communities on Mars to try to prepare for the eventual departure. And people on Mars are very bored. So they get this drug called Candy, and when they eat it, they have this sort of psychedelic experience. And they have a doll called the Peggy something, which they use to sort of guide their psychedelic experience so that they can have this sort of vivid vision of inhabiting somebody else's life, and they can enjoy that trip sort of communally with their spouses or whatever. And our main character is a psychic in this universe. Basically, he works for a guy whose name was like Barney. And Barney is a guy who utilizes, psychics to sort of grow his business. They sort of predict what trends are going to happen, and then he sort of invests there. And arriving from deep space for the first time in many, many years is a man named Palmer Eldritch. And Palmer Eldritch is a very fun character because he's basically, through the course of this story, he becomes sort of like an insane god. Because he comes with a new drug, which is more potent than candy, called YuGiOh. And when you take it, Palmer Eldritch is able to manipulate your perception of reality. Don't know how.
Whoa.
Yeah, and everybody starts to take it. And what characterizes Palmer Eldritch is he has, and these are the 3 stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, he has a mechanical hand, he's got mechanical eyes, and he's got metal teeth. And I heard it said somewhere that they're all representative of his disassociation from humanity, where he can't speak truth because of his teeth, he can't see reality, and he can't touch it. Here's a photo of him. And basically everybody starts seeing those 3 characteristics on everybody they meet, because this guy has just invaded everybody's perception of reality. And the entire story is this, the characters are kind of trying to escape from his grip, but whenever they think they're out, they just realize that they're even deeper into the trip than they thought. And like the best Philip K. Dick stories, it doesn't make any sense except when you're reading it. So I would recommend everybody pick that book up. It's like 50 years old, but it's still good. It's a lot less, like a lot of his books are permeated by the sort of Cold War paranoia. This book really isn't, but it's still good.
Cool. It sounds very interesting. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all you want to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, unless you guys have questions about it.
I'd rather just read it. It just sounds really cool.
I also recommend YuGiOh, the book I kind of went through earlier. That book is insanely good. Maybe I'll talk about that one day.
I feel like I should probably read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep first, just because I really like Blade Runner. But yeah, this one sounds really good too. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
But now it's time for the doozy.
Ooh.
I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. But you saw Perfect Blue, and I rewatched it recently just to refresh myself on it. My feelings on the movie haven't really changed.
I rewatched it too.
So
yeah.
Perfect Blue is the sort of the impetus for us. We were on a little break recording episodes while we upload the backlog, but we came back strapping to record this one because we wanted to talk about Perfect Blue.
Yes.
So I'm gonna give you a bit of context so that you can understand my feelings on the movie first.
Okay.
I didn't watch it alone. I was watching it with a friend of mine, and she doesn't really have a good... She has a very little appetite for cruel media, I should say. So like Game of Thrones, no, nothing like that. Her idea of like a fantasy movie is Bambi before the mother was shot. I don't know, but so basically she came over. We watch movies every now and then.
You should not have you
Wait
should not.
a minute. Wait a minute.
You should not have seen this with her then.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
And we were watching it. She was like, we should watch it. What movie did you want to watch? And I was like, hey, my friends suggest Perfect Blue. They think that's like a good movie, and I want to watch that. And we watched it, and I saw her get more and more distraught throughout the entire thing. but I didn't want to shut it off because I really liked it, and I didn't really
Yay!
Yay! I didn't want to.
Because you had an obligation to fulfill for this fucking podcast.
And I saw her get she was super uncomfortable with it, and I was like, if I want to be a good friend, I really should stop watching this, but I really want to finish it.
Okay.
So, when she went home and she was like, I don't know if I want to watch another movie with you.
Perfect. Bridges burned.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But on the movie itself, I think it's a great movie. I think it's very aptly named, like Perfect Blue, because it is like a perfect movie. It's like made Satoshi.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what they had in mind when they came up with that name. We're gonna make a perfect movie.
What I find super funny and ironic is that it's called Perfect Blue, but the predominant color throughout the movie is red.
It feels like a movie that had been made a million times. It was like so effortless, but so incredibly well made at the same time. Like it's just like you have the greatest studio of all time just barely flexing their muscle, but it's still so good.
Well, I mean, it's Madhouse. Madhouse, they've made like just some of the greatest animes of all time, you know?
Just the visual of her Mima, the other Mima, I should say, sort of floating around, chasing her through the streets, like, whoa, that's super cool. And that would not work in live action.
See, now, I don't know how legit this is, but I heard that originally the movie was supposed to be live action, but that the film reels were burned somehow, and it would have been too expensive to reshoot it, so they instead turned it into an anime. And again, I don't know how legit that is. That might just be some urban legend, but if that's the case, then I'm glad that's what happened, because watching the movie now, like, there's no way those effects in like the early 90s would hold up. Like, it would look like trash. And as an anime, it looks perfect. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
They're able to sort of stress the faces of, like, when characters do disgusting things, they sort of stress just how disgusting looking they are.
Yeah. It's
like
really
Mimania,
bad.
especially.
Yeah.
And Rumi. Oh.
Yeah, and that whole thing where at the end where her name is Rumi the fat girl.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She
The
used to be
manager.
an idol when she was younger, and she's just kind of washed up now.
That entire part
Well,
where
she's not washed up. She moved on to train other idols.
Sure, like, yeah,
But
sure.
she
But
still
I just mean
glorifies that past.
that's what I meant was that, like, she's washed up in the sense that, like, she's not only no longer doing it, but she's still a part of the industry in like in a more like in the background sort of position, and she still idolizes that like persona so much that, like, by the end of the movie, like, when she starts seeing how Mima was straying from that path, she felt the need to fill in that gap herself, like, it's harkening back to who she used to be, but then also like becoming Mima, because Mima is like ideally who she probably like wants to be, or how she used to see herself.
her life revolved around creating that, and she doesn't want it to disappear. That sort of idea of Mima. That entire scene, that entire section where you saw Mima, but it was actually her, and this way, like, the sort of juxtaposition between what's actually happening and what appears to be happening, that was so fucking well done.
I know. It was so good. Because it so effectively gets across how mentally fucked Mima is at that point. Like, she is struggling so hard to understand, like, what she's looking at and, like, what is real and what isn't. And it's conveyed so effortlessly. Like,
Yeah.
God,
There was one
so
shot.
good.
One shot I didn't like about that scene, and like one shot I didn't like about this movie in general. In the second viewing now, is when they actually when she gets chased by Rumi at the end, and then there's one shot where in the reflection of a mirror or of a window, you actually see her sweatily running
Yes.
after her, and that was such a slapstick shot in my opinion, where I wish they had just kept it with that apparition of herself. I didn't need to know what it looks like in reality.
I felt that was more like ugh, like this is what's like, ooh. That was sort of my reaction to it.
Yeah, but then you can't go. Then I couldn't help but go back to, okay, how did she get down from that window?
She
and
jumped.
She jumped, but I'm just then imagining this fat woman trying really hard to get down to the street that Mima fell
But that's what's
down
actually
into.
happening.
Yeah, but I don't want to just know that. I don't want to think about that.
Well, it wants you to think about it because that's what's actually happening.
Yeah, okay, that's a fair point.
So if I can quickly just give my summary, because I wrote this down, and I don't want to lose the opportunity to say this because I'm very proud of my review.
Okay.
I think Perfect Blue, it's aptly named on two accounts. The first one, and that's just relating to the movie itself, it's a perfect movie. The second one, relating to my experience, it's the perfect Blue Balls movie.
Oh! God damn! Oh.
No, she's not that kind of friend. She's not that kind of friend, everybody. I don't want her to watch this and think I'm spreading lies.
Okay. I was going to say, though, like, you probably should have asked us beforehand. And just be like, hey, guys, I'm going to watch this with a friend. You know, should I? Then we could have explained, like, if she's not into, like, really rough, like, not mean-spirited, but just, like, because, like, Mima goes through a lot of shit throughout the movie. Like, she does like the rape scene in the double bind show, and then she almost actually gets raped at some point, and it's rough stuff.
But she didn't actually.
No, she didn't.
Yeah.
I said almost.
And the one thing one of the things I clearly remembered from the first viewing was in that rape scene, the one that is actually the TV show, where the guy who is sitting on top of her actually apologizes to her. That made it so human to me in that moment, where I'm just as uncomfortable with this as you are, but we are professional actors, so we have to go through this.
Yeah, I liked that a lot too. Like, and it's also very uncomfortable to watch. Like, just because it is a fake rape scene for a show within a movie, and yet even with all those degrees of separation, it's still really uncomfortable to watch. It's just this, like, her eyes glaze over and she's becoming disoriented, and it's just like, oh god, it's really rough.
And then after the scene where she's like screaming like, I don't want to fucking do it, it's like, she's not having a good time.
But she's good. She's good. She's a good actress in the movie. And that's why at the end she actually becomes super famous. Because she has that talent. One of the things I kind of forgot was how much of a dunce she actually is. At the start, especially, where she is
yeah, she doesn't know how to use a computer.
Yeah, she's so passive. She relies on everyone else. And I kind of remembered her having more of a character, but she didn't, and that actually makes sense because that's how everyone else just keeps projecting the ideal image of her onto her against her will, because she just lets it happen, you know?
Mimania is like projecting onto her, thinking that like she is this perfect angel of an idol. Rumi is projecting onto her and like what she believes that she should be doing with her career, even though she's like taking in a different direction. She's kind of like if you really think about it, there's not a whole lot to her actual character throughout the movie. She's past a lot of it is her passively like just accepting what's happening, and it isn't until like as the movie goes on where she starts becoming more active and she gets more agency.
That is the whole theme of the movie, is she doesn't know who she actually is. She just has this dream of becoming famous.
A singer.
Yeah. I mean, a singer first, then an actress later.
Yeah.
But to get to that, she just listens to everyone around her, and she never forms her own opinion or way of doing things. And that's why why all these different ideas keep clashing and take her down with them.
You know, it like that's why when
it's great.
That's why when her other singers at Cham, when they were talking about like, oh, this photographer is like he does like those really lewd pictures, doesn't he? And the other girl was like, yeah, but Mima doesn't care. She's probably just gonna, just show it all, and she does.
Yeah.
And that just shows how like she's just doing whatever she thinks she's supposed to do rather than what she wants to do.
Yeah. It's perfect script. It's just a great movie. Great movie.
Apparently, it was initially based on a book, but when Satoshi Kon directed it, he also wrote the script, and he made like a lot of substantial changes from the book in order to kind of like make his own vision, which I think is the right way to do it. Like, I'm sure some people who are fans of the book are like, oh, it should have been more faithful or whatever, but like it's not like just because something isn't like 100% faithful, that doesn't make it bad. It just needs to work and make sense within the medium. Like,
yeah.
Going back to Blade Runner, the entire theme of like, oh, is he an android or isn't he? That's one chapter in the middle of the book. Like that book is about people sort of uniting with this sort of digital Jesus character. And you don't get any of that in the movie because it doesn't work in a movie, assumably.
I thought it was pretty obvious that Decker was not an android, like or a replicant or whatever. I thought it was pretty obvious that he was just a human.
The director of the movie would disagree with you.
I don't care what the director says.
I see you don't respect his artistic vision.
His?
You know whose artistic vision can eat a dick? The guy who designed Sonic, but not the movie Sonic, like the original, the Sonic from video games with like the green eyes and the lanky legs and the disgusting body proportions. That guy's vision can go to hell.
But like, Ridley Scott did not write Blade Runner. He directed it. He didn't write the script.
Yeah, but you just said it's okay when people take liberties with the source material to make it better.
Sure.
I think Ridley Scott...
But
I think Blade Runner is a script Ridley Scott had something to do with.
No, he didn't.
Really? I think he touched it up at some point, right? I know he didn't read the book.
I know that Rutger Hauer ad-libbed the Tears in the Rain at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think Ridley Scott wrote the script. And yeah, I was saying that like sometimes, it can be good to make changes, but
in Blade Runner, it's the exact wrong choice to make the movie work. To have Deckard be a replicant, just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the point that I was trying to make was just that like the movie doesn't make any sense if Decker is a replicant.
Yeah.
Like he's constantly getting overpowered by them. Like
there are different types of replicants, but the problem with the Blade Runner movie is that there is no real theme being explored until like at the very, very end. Most of the movie is just sort of guiding you between these really beautiful vistas. Like it begins,
I would disagree with that. I mean,
it begins very strong with like setting up where he's like, "Oh, is that a real owl?" And she goes, "There are no more real owls," and that's carried over from the book. But then at the middle, it's just like a detective story where we know what's going on, and it's just not a lot of stuff happening.
Yes,
But
that's true.
everything with Rutger Hauer in that movie is great. Which I think is sort of inverted from the book, because his character, what's his name? What's Rutger Hauer's character's name?
No idea.
I forget.
His name is Roy Batty. Roy Batty is a really boring character in the book, and Deckard is a really interesting character in the book. But I think we should go back to Perfect Blue.
Sure. So I was a little worried because I thought that you weren't going to like Perfect Blue just the way that you were talking about it before we discussed it. So I am glad that you ended up enjoying it.
Oh yeah, this is not the horror movie you like. Oh, if you need a girl, just watch a horror movie. Girls love horror movies. This is not that horror movie.
No.
It's really good.
This is not a horror movie at all.
Yeah,
it's a psychological horror movie.
It's a such, yeah, I'd say so. Like, I'd say it's a psychological thriller with horror elements. Because it's got some frightening things here and there, depending on your disposition. I personally am not, like, scared of the movie at all, but I'd say it does have some, like, shocking imagery.
I think that's just semantics. I think we can all agree that it is, like, it is a good movie. It's a good movie in its own field. It's not...
It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah,
it's not...
One of the best.
It's not a Conjuring. It's not in that category.
I would not call it a horror movie. At most, it has...
It's a thriller, and it has a lot of social commentary.
I guess my definition of horror is just looser than your guys's.
At most, I'd just say it has horror elements, but, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter what you want to label it as. It's a fantastic movie. It's a masterpiece in my eyes. It's one of Satoshi Kon's best, and I think that's a good stopping point. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with the essay question. So stick around. Welcome back, everyone. It's time to brew ourselves some espresso and talk about our essay topic, which is what makes a good or bad flawed character. So just to be clear what we mean by that, because you might say, like, well, if it's a flawed character, that means it's a bad character, right? Because that means the same thing. Not necessarily. So you can have a well-written character that is flawed, but there's also poor ways of handling a flawed character. So apparently there's something about Superman here as well that I think Acer wanted to talk about, so I'll let you lead in.
No, I just put that in brackets behind because Boken and I once... I think, Boken, you said that you don't like Superman?
Yes.
Yeah, I just put that in brackets behind this because I thought maybe there's a way to thread him into this conversation, but...
No, Daniel just fucking shoveled him into the conversation.
Yeah, see,
so let's go.
The thing is, he's not a flawed character, so I don't think this is the time to talk about Superman.
Okay, then. Disregard.
Great stuff.
Save us, Daniel.
Okay, so I would say that what makes a good flawed character is that the things that makes this character interesting are the flaws. So I would say that for the most part, a character like Superman, it does depend on how you handle them. I believe strongly in the idea that, like, execution is the most important thing. That being said, I think it's easier to get a character like Superman wrong because he's perfect. So
Most
And-
Superman stories suck specifically because how do you write a guy who is perfect and doesn't let you down?
Right. So in that sense, it makes for a more compelling story for the most part if the character is flawed, because people are flawed. We all have our issues, and it may not necessarily be that we directly see ourselves in the character because of that specific flaw, but we're able to relate to them in a more general sense because we have that foundation of humanity where, okay, this person is flawed and I'm also flawed. So that creates a connection that isn't really there with a character like Superman. With Superman, I would say, like, you have to come up with more interesting ways in order to make that character good.
It's the same with Superman as Captain America, where what makes them interesting is seeing their perfect moral compass not bent even in the harshest of circumstances, and watching how they can solve their problems without breaking their codes of ethics.
Right. I think I remember Captain America quote where it was something like when the world around you is yelling at you to move, you have to be a tree and say no, you move.
Yes.
It was something like that. I forget the actual quote. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah. But I think I think when we think of like what makes like a good flawed character, we typically think of characters that are very human. So how is this done poorly then?
Ooh,
I think that's hard. I think that's a little harder to get across but I think the best way to put it would be this. And this is only one facet of this type of character, but I think it makes a lot of sense when I phrase it like this. If the story only makes sense because the characters are stupid, then the story doesn't make sense. So I would say that is emblematic of how to do a flawed character poorly, where the story is only like propped up because their flaws are so outlandish that like it's what's propelling the plot in an unnatural way.
Yeah. Okay. I have three things written down here in terms of what is a bad flawed character. Because we already agree what a good flawed character is, right? I think... So what I have written down here in my notes is when the resolution is forced. So when a character overcomes his flaw, but it's not necessarily... Or when the arc around the flaw is kind of finished, but it's not natural. The character just has some kind of epiphany out of nowhere.
See, that reminds me of Dante from like the Devil May Cry reboot, where like the game tries to like imply or tell us that like that he has gone through this arc throughout the story, but it doesn't feel earned because he acts as like this obnoxious little shit throughout the entire game. And then all of a sudden we have to just buy at the end that like, oh no, he's still a good guy. Like he's better now. No.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel earned because nothing that happened in the story that would really convince us that he has grown. It doesn't really even convince us that he's like really gotten over like any of his problems or his flaws. It more so just comes across that he fell in love with Kat and he just likes Kat and now he just wants to protect Kat, and that's all there is to it. He didn't really grow as a person. He just grew a boner.
Huh. Boner. No.
Okay, so what if as my second note here is when it's inconsistent, and as an example for myself I wrote down Luke in The Last Jedi, Because I know a lot of people don't like where they take his character, and they don't like that whole arc about him trying to train Kylo Ren and almost murdering him in his sleep. And a lot of people have this ideal image of Luke in their minds that Luke Skywalker would never do that ever. What do you guys think about that arc?
I think the problem with that is that I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect that Luke stayed the exact same way all of those years after the events of the Return of the Jedi up to The Last Jedi to expect him to just be this static character the whole time. I think is unrealistic.
Yeah, but he's not supposed to be static, I guess, because he can kind of grow paranoid of the Force and that constant threat of someone becoming evil, right? Because of the temptation of the dark side. So he becomes kind of paranoid about teaching people about it. But would he go as far as murdering someone in their sleep because he's afraid that guy might become a Sith? That is a different step. That is kind of the ultimate step where you just throw your moral code out of the window.
Well.
Also, I remember in the movie it was kind of a bit more grainy in terms of who actually started and why and all that shit. But, or was it just Kylo Ren explaining to Rey that he didn't attack Luke, but Luke attacked first?
Kylo Ren
it's been a
woke
while
up
since I
when
saw The
Luke
Last
was
Jedi,
about
but
to
I
attack him.
I thought what was happening was like Luke was thinking about it and but he hesitated because he started to second guess himself, and that's when Kylo Ren caved the house.
Yeah.
We should do a 5-hour video on The Last Jedi and why it's bad.
I don't feel that strongly about the movie.
Nah, me neither. What's some good flawed characters, would you guys say?
Oh god, so many. I think
I'd say there's way more examples of good
one of
flawed
my
than
favorite
bad flawed.
things. Oh, Daniel, you keep cutting out, and I think I just talked over you.
You cut out for me as well. I think that's just Discord.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me go. Because one of my favorite things about flawed characters is when they have a redemption arc. And canonically, the best redemption arc in all of media history is, of course, Zuko from The Last Airbender. So that is probably one of the best flawed characters.
What is that?
You don't know The Last Airbender?
I know The Last Airbender. I don't know what Zuko is.
Zuko's the character, the prince who hunts.
Yeah,
who hunts the last.
Doesn't
Airbender.
he have like a? Doesn't he have like a mark on his eye?
He has a huge scar on his eye. Yeah.
He's not Avatar with the blue arrow.
No.
No, that's Aang. That's the actual Avatar. And Zuko is a prince who got exiled from the kingdom because he misbehaved in a war meeting or something. And then he got thrown out by his own father, and so to redeem himself in the eyes of his father, he tries to catch the Avatar.
People say that Avatar is like this great story. I thought that movie was shit.
That was good.
Okay, he's flawed because what?
Because he's evil and he has bought into that Fire Nation propaganda, and also he's very volatile. He is stupid. He doesn't think things through and all that shit. And he just becomes he becomes so much better. And because he has 3 seasons to grow, and they really take their time with it, and they give him the right secondary characters who have the right influences on him. And that is one of the most earned just redemption stories I've ever seen.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, it's
one that I can think of that really springs to mind is Luke von Farb from Tales of the Abyss. He starts off, he's just a little shit. Just flat out. He is just an annoying brat. But it makes sense because he's the son of a duke. Not only that, but like he's literally never left the confines of his mansion for pretty much almost his entire life. Like they refused to let him out because he had gotten kidnapped when he was younger and he had gotten amnesia from it. And they're really protective of him. And so when he finally gets out and sees the world, he's like he's used to everyone pampering him. He's used to everyone treating him nice, and just like he's just created this like shitty personality because of the way that he's been treated his whole life. So when he has to actually deal with the real world, he doesn't know how to handle it, and he just acts as like this fucking prick. And there comes a moment where he makes a colossal mistake. He makes just the I'm obviously not gonna spoil it, but let's just say that the mistake he makes is of a huge magnitude, and the way he reacts to it was so traumatizing for him that like it starts his redemption arc, where afterwards he starts to really reflect on the way that he's acted. He starts to realize that, like, man, he has just been awful. He has just been a little shit this entire time. And it starts his growth to becoming like a better person and to try and like make up for all the wrongs that he's done. And it felt really earned, like, because like the way that he seemed prior to that catastrophic event, like it felt like it would have to be something big in order for him to change his ways. So when it happened and he makes that effort to become a better person, it's believable, and it feels earned when he, like, by the end of the game, he's completely turned around, and you really feel like he's really transformed as a character. Yeah, great game.
Another great flawed character is Ivan Karamazov from the nobody's read that book. If we want to talk about Superman, we could talk about Lex Luthor, because he's a good flawed character.
Sure.
Lex Luthor is sort of the embodiment of the Nietzschean Superman, to the extent that he despises Superman because Superman didn't really need to earn any of his powers. And also because he fears that society's dependence on Superman is ultimately a weakness, where people should really cultivate power within themselves and self-reliance and all that stuff. And in many ways, he is the real Man of Steel, but he goes to these extremes to try to prove his way. And if he were the opponent of many superheroes, he would be the good guy. But specifically because Superman is the perfect sort of superhero, Lex Luthor always comes short, ethically speaking, because he always tries to do these crazy things. And
so see, that's an interesting separation, maybe. That is he flawed because he has a different outlook on society, or different philosophical view?
That's
yes.
not
really a flaw.
Well, his flaw really is just his ego.
Okay.
Right? There's a famous panel where he discovers who Superman is. He discovers that it is Clark Kent, but he just can't reconcile it. Like, he looks at that and it's undeniable proof in front of you. I think originally he built like a supercomputer that just deduced it, but I believe it's been retconned to he just found out through cameras or something. But his reaction to discovering it was just to smash the computer. Like, no, this is ridiculous. A man as great as Superman would not hide behind the veneer of an idiot farm boy from Kansas. And he it's like he can't take his head out of the clouds. There's a great I don't know if you guys have read All-Star Superman, have you?
No.
No.
That story ends. That's sort of the final days of Superman before he dies, and that story ends with Lex Luthor obtaining the powers of Superman. And
oh shit.
yeah, and that in their final battle, Superman shoots him with like a gravity gun, and Lex Luthor's just like scolding him, "You idiot! You thought this was gonna stop me?" And then he's just pummeling him, and then he just sort of stops and starts observing the world around him, because now he has super sight, and he's like observing how all the atoms align together, and he's like realizing all the fundamental structures of the universe with his superpowers. And then the characters start talking in the background like, what's going on here? And Superman like says, that gravity gun I shot you with, it altered time for you. So the super serum you drank to give you those powers, it ran out. Like the 24 hours you had those powers, it's over. And Lex Luthor's like, in impotence, he tries to like drink more, but Superman had already taken the extra serum away from him. And then he's just like sheepishly like banging at Superman's chest like, if it wasn't for you, I could have saved the world. And he's like screaming at him. But then Superman sort of comes back to him with, Lex, if it had really mattered to you, you could have saved the world years ago. And like you read that and it's like, whoa, Superman with the fucking
sick burn
with the super
facts.
But it is a very good observation on Lex Luthor, where he just can't get over himself enough to be the real sort of Superman. And they're actually doing, I think he is the Superman in modern continuity in some extent. And I haven't read any of the new 52, the Rebirth DC Universe stuff, but I believe that's what they're doing with him, and that's super interesting. But I think he's a very good character, and I'm very upset that whenever they make these fucking DC movies, they always get the worst piece of shit to play him, and they just oh, you want an intellectually complex character? No, here's Gene Hackman in a wig. And he's just the biggest fucking idiot. And then it's like, oh, well, let's do Jesse. Oh, you guys want Mark Strong? Or you want Bryan Cranston? Somebody with actual, like, gravitas to sort of embody this character? Nah, let's do Jesse Eisenberg. And it's like, wow, this is such a betrayal of what... Like, Lex Luthor is so smart, so cunning, so conniving, that with the entire Justice League watching him, with Batman and everybody going at him, he was able to become president of the United States of America. He's so intelligent, he was able to outplay everybody. Nah, he's just an idiot in a foppish wig.
But I thought that his reason for disliking Superman is because he lost his hair? Like I heard something about that?
Yeah, that's the original. That was like the original one where Superman landed in Metropolis and like the radiation burned off his hair or something like that when he was a kid. That stuff is not in modern continuity because that is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. At least they retconned that. That's no good.
Yeah, that sucks. The reason he hates him is multi-pronged, but it really boils down to that his idea of what a Superman should be is not fulfilled by what Clark Kent does as Superman. So he feels like he's sort of a betrayal of the ultimate realization of mankind. And he believes that Superman weakens us.
But yeah, you brought up Breaking Bad. I mean, talk about flawed characters, right? But most of
Why do you
those...
say that? Why do you say that?
Why would I? Because those characters... I mean, all of them are assholes. And all of them make mistakes. But that is what a good flawed character does. It's he or she makes mistakes, but they're understandable mistakes. Because the character has been properly set up and you can understand why he would fall into that train of action. right? Like Skylar keeps fucking and trying to pry into Walter's business because he can't explain to her what's going on, and she's fucking paranoid about it. And it makes sense for her to be this pushy, but she really shouldn't do it. But she does, you know. That's a good flawed character. I mean, Walter White it's really understandable why he becomes the way he is, and then Jesse, of course, who is the character that starts out incredibly flawed because he's just a punk with no life and trying to make an easy buck off drugs. But then over time he realizes that shit doesn't pay out at all in the end, and he just becomes incredibly jaded by what he has to do. And he takes, a character arc in the completely different direction where he becomes a better character. All that stuff. I mean, it's just very well developed.
I was thinking about Berserk and how I feel like, the obvious choice would be like Guts. Guts is a great example of a good flawed character. Casca, but I'd say that Griffith doesn't get enough credit for being a good flawed character because he spends so much of the story, or at least in the Golden Age arc, appearing as perfect that we tend to forget that he is human and he does make mistakes and he is flawed.
Some of the most striking moments in that entire arc are when those little cracks of humanity appear.
Right.
Like
exactly.
When Casca finds him in the water and all that stuff.
Yeah, because he was selling himself for money.
Here's a funny photo. I don't know if you saw it earlier.
Please don't. But throughout the majority of Berserk, it feels as if Griffith is just above things. Like he is this god almost. But then when he loses to Guts, that is probably the most human moment for his character in the entire story, because he's confronted with his own flaws. He's confronted with his own inability to succeed at something, and it really shatters his own his own perception of himself almost, where he's always just if he wanted something he just got it, and then here was Guts defying him. And in that, it shows how flawed he is and how flawed his relationship with Guts was. Where I'm not going to say it was necessarily one-sided, but there was this imbalance in their relationship, and it also kind of speaks to the bullshit in what he was saying before to Princess Charlotte, where he said oh, the man that is to be my friend is someone that I consider my equal.
Somebody who is able to defy me.
And when that happens, he doesn't know how to handle it.
No.
He's literally confronted with the situation that he spoke of is so ominously and so with reverence almost, but when it actually happens, he doesn't know what to do. Man, Berserk is so good, guys.
It's pretty good. Have you been watching the new anime?
Oh, with the amazing CG.
Satoshi Kon, who? Jesus Christ.
More like Sahushi Cone.
I pray that one day Production IG are the ones that are in charge of Berserk, because
who are they?
They did Ghost in the Shell.
I haven't seen it.
How can you have not seen Ghost in the Shell?
Ghost in the Shell is fucking trash. Don't at me.
What?
I really don't like it, man. I've watched it 3 times. I still don't like it.
Oh my. Ugh.
Scarlett Johansson is pretty hot, though. I'll give you that, Daniel. But
okay.
This is my character in this episode. I'm the guy who doesn't know about anime and only watches live-action adaptations.
What a flawed character you are.
Avatar? You mean that movie? And also, no, I guess there's only those two adaptations.
I think we've mostly exhausted this talking point. So you guys want to wrap up?
You can come up with like a billion more characters. I think people have grown to like flawed characters more in general.
Yeah.
The mainstream audiences understand now that characters with depth and personality and actual flaws are way more interesting than Superman.
Yeah. If we want to take this conversation just a bit further, what do you guys know about Mr. A?
I don't know who that is.
You guys know what Watchmen is, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Rorschach is based on Mr. A. Mr. A. Okay. Mr. A was made by Steve Ditko, who created Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, with Stan Lee, and he was sort of a response to what Steve Ditko saw at the time as the dumbing down of the superhero, where characters are getting stronger and stronger physically. They're able to do more amazing physical feats, but they are unable to solve their mundane everyday problems because they are becoming ethically less developed. And he was an objectivist, Steve Ditko. He was like an Ayn Rand far right-winger. And he did a video, I think it's like the only recording of his voice, where he was talking about Mr. A, and he explained that Mr. A is the sort of realization of what a true hero is. And he goes over how people... Daniel's dog. He goes over how people accept the flawed hero not because he is a more interesting or fleshed out character, but because it is an easier model to follow. So Mr. A is sort of a rejection of that. He's a rejection of the flawed hero. And Ditko gave a reasoning of this where you don't want a flawed cop. Like, a flawed cop corrupts the legal good, and a flawed hero would corrupt the moral good. And because they corrupt these sort of ideals, they drag all of us down with them. And he goes over also how... I think he was quoting Einstein, where he said that art was philosophically more important than history. Because history shows us how people did act, but art teaches us how we theoretically could act, and that flawed characters they're a cop-out, and they're also detrimental because they lower the standard of conduct.
What?
That's a wild thesis.
Yeah, I've watched this video. It's like a 5-minute video. I've watched it a few times. I'm probably butchering the meaning of it, but I'll send you guys the video if you want. Because it is actually very interesting when you're watching it. In his words, not in my sort of cockneyed, half-remembered...
It sounds like then for you, art is nothing more than propaganda. Because you need to tell everyone how they should act. And tell everyone to be better.
Yeah, well,
It's the moral equivalent of telling the world to get good.
No, but I think it is interesting that he would say that, because this is the guy who made Spider-Man, and this is not some rando guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. Steve Ditko is like one of the pillars of superhero fiction, and I thought it was a really interesting perspective from him. Specifically, the part the part that really spoke to me was this idea that the flawed hero is a pathetic standard, and that you can do interesting characters without falling back on like gray moralities. But he believed a lot of stuff that I didn't believe, so I don't know how.
Well, I certainly don't believe that.
I don't.
I mean, I appreciate the sentiment of like, hey, you don't have to do a morally gray character in order to have a well-written character.
Yeah,
like
totally.
That's fine, but to say that these characters are inherently cop-outs is just, I'd say that's artistically stagnant.
Well, I guess he would reason back that these characters are, I don't know if I'd say, well, maybe he didn't say cop out, but the sentiment that you're creating characters which are ethically lesser because these characters can't solve mundane problems.
But that's so not true, because from a flawed character, you can actually, he feels relatable, and then when that character becomes better because of something, that can also be inspirational to a real person.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it can be more real to that person, because the starting point is closer to what reality actually is.
Definitely. I don't agree with everything Steve Ditko said in that video, but I still think it's an interesting sentiment. And I probably shouldn't try to present his views because I don't fully remember what he said.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel like I've seen that sentiment more recently, that sometimes people want just simple fun, simple characters. Not always people being bad and backstabbing each other and everything needing 20 different storylines. Sometimes they just want a fun character on an adventure.
Yeah. See.
All right. I think that's about it for that discussion. So we're going to move on to the outro. So guys, we want to ask you to leave some questions. So if you're listening, either on like YouTube or, any of the like audio streaming services, you can leave us a comment and you can ask us, you can present to us possible future essay questions if you want, and we'll say like, hey, this was, by so and so, and you guys can, get a bit of interaction going that way. And yeah, I want to thank my co-hosts for coming, of course. It's always a pleasure. What are you guys working on before we head out? So, Acer, you got anything in the docket?
I've uploaded the interview with Chris Avalon. I haven't made it public yet. And then I'm just finishing up work on KOTOR 2.
Excellent. Boken, what about you?
I just uploaded a video about Space Marine, Warhammer 40k Space Marine.
I saw that video. It was really good.
Oh, thank you. I'm one of the things I'm happy with that video is that I try to, even when I negatively criticize something, I try to give suggestions on what could have been better. Not just say it's shit, but say how it could be better. Like, that is, in my opinion, the difference between someone who can criticize and someone who can actually write and come up with ideas that would improve something. I've seen that from other creators, and I feel like I haven't done that before, really. So, yeah.
Fair.
And, yeah, also I'm... my Gorogoa story analysis is in the works. Should be done fairly soon, but I don't want to upload too soon since I just released the video. But, yeah, that's coming. And then
awesome.
for the video
good.
After that, I've started writing the script. I finished the show, rewatching it. It's just as awesome as I remember it, but I don't want to reveal what it is.
Well, now I want to know. Shit.
It was on my topics list, but on our docket, but I took it off.
I forgot what you wrote down, so. All right. Well, I uploaded a video not that long ago that was discussing 5 centimeters per second as well as Garden of Words. It was between a friend of mine, and we basically just discussed what we felt were the meanings behind those movies, and about half of it was for one movie, the other half was the other, and it's actually kind of an older recording, but I felt that it was good to release it and get it out there because I'd been sitting on it for a while. I had been changing my approach to videos for a while, and I wasn't sure where I could fit it. But I decided, just letting it go to waste isn't going to do anyone any good. So I put it out there. Hopefully you enjoy it. I'm also working on a video. I'm actually working on several videos, but the one that's going to come out as of this recording, the next one that's going to be released is one on the beginner's guide. The video is going to be called The Beginner's Guide and Projection. Originally, I had a few other titles in mind, but I realized that, you know what? This really nails what I feel that the intent of the video is. I've also still working on the School Days video as well as the Tales of Hysteria video. So hopefully those will be finished sometime soon. But yeah, the Beginner's Guide one is absolutely going to be the next one. The script's already done. It's being edited right now, so it shouldn't take too much longer. But anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching.
Wait, before I've just remembered, and I feel like I should say this in fairness to Steve Ditko. His criticisms, I didn't say this earlier, his criticisms were specifically referring to superheroes. I don't think like he was talking about fiction in general. I think it was a very specific response to superhero movements at the time. But go on.
Okay, fair enough.
I just feel like, I'm doing a hatchet job of giving his views, and I'm not properly giving it context. I think it's only fair that
I hear you. You just wanted to clarify that. That's fine. But anyways, thank you for listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. Take care, everyone.